The trade deadline has passed and now it's time to put a full stop on it all. Welcome to the Gillette AFL Trade Wrap. Coming up, we'll look at who your club picked up, who your club lost and which teams did the best over what has been a massive month. Joining us as we go club by club, Damien Barrett and Peter Ryan. G'day guys, thanks for being here.
Mate.
Good to see you. We're going to get straight into it. Going in alphabetical order, now Damien, Adelaide. No early draft picks of course, but they have managed to strengthen their forward half.
They did. They were big players, though, when it was all said and done. They've picked up Podsiadly, as you can see there, as insurance for Tex Walker not being ready till around 7 or 8, which is the current forecast on him. Eddie Betts picked up as the free agent. I mean, they're good pickups, particularly Betts. Lost Bernie Vince, and they're not too worried by that, given they got pick 23 back in return. And clearly they have made the determination on Bernie Vince that his best is behind him. Melbourne's given him a new home. This is what they're going to hopefully expect out of Betts, and you'd think he played that venue pretty well. But really, when it was all said and done, to me, the Adelaide Crows were bit players in this draft.
They were very much hamstrung by the fact that they were out of the first 2 rounds of the draft. So they got Bernie Vince out of there, got pick 23, which just gives them some sort of talent to bring into the club. Podsiadly will fill a hole for a couple of years, and that's a fair result for them.
All right, we're going to alternate between the two of you as to who gets to give a grade. So your first, Damo, a grade for the Crows.
Yeah, I'm going to give them C. I factored into the equation there. They were out of the first 2 rounds, but a C for the Crows.
That sounds like just a rubber stamp C.
Yeah, there you go. Now, Pete, Brisbane had a player exodus on its hands with all the turmoil up there, but they have managed to improve their draft position.
Yeah, look, fewer clubs have gone into a trade in worse position than Rob Kerr found himself in. If you're a poker player, you had a 2 and 7 off suit. Basically, he made that into 2 2s, and that's the best he could do. He managed to get a couple of picks all inside 22, 25, 32, 34. He's got Jared Pollock out of there, Longer, Doherty, Yeo and Carnesis. Terrible situation for the club. The club should be embarrassed that they actually have found themselves in this situation. Rob Kerr said that all he had to do to start the trade period was not get ripped off. Now, that's a shocking position for a list manager to go in to a trade period. They've managed to get Jackson Payne into the club. He's a talented Collingwood player. Gives them a bit of a lift up forward, which they've been crying out for years. And when they lost Longer, who originally picked Hawthorn, and then they went back and thought they might get him, and then he decided to go to St Kilda again, so another loss. They managed to get Trent West in from Geelong. He's a premiership ruckman. He can play. His form hasn't been great, but he might just fill a hole for them for a while.
Give us a grade, Pete.
Well, I gave him a C-, but I feel it's a bit harsh on Rob Kerr. He's worked pretty bloody hard for that C.
Now, Damo, the situation of the Lions is really intriguing. This is just an indication of it. Irishman Pierce Hanley has given us some perspective. Tweeting in answer to a fan's question today, he says, #Mummy's boys are home now. What do you make of everything that's been happening up there?
Oh, look, each individual who left that club has got a right to go and do it. It's up to the club to keep them. And, Peter, I reckon the C- have given us pretty lenient. I would have been giving them an F if I had been in charge of that club, because you can't have that many players walk out and get nothing by way of fair comparison.
I'd give the club a 0, to be honest. I mean, they had to get a new coach. Lepish came in. They had board turmoil. Imagine being a young player, 18 to 20, talented, and you're looking at the club in disarray. It's a disgraceful position for them to be in, and they should actually have a really good look at their welfare systems, all their structures, and make sure it never happens again. They've lost their first 2 picks from 2010, 2011. Who knows down the track how much effect it's going to have?
And that's the point. There's no obvious reason as to why they got themselves into that situation in the first place. Anyway, we must move on. Carlton has snared 3 players with senior experience, but not a key forward, Damien.
Matty, I really like what they did. I'm really buoyant about what they've done. They didn't have a lot to work with. Got Thomas for nothing, and then picked up Doherty with 32 and Andreas Everett for 33. But
that was the last trade done.
Yeah, got right on deadline. But I like it. Those 3 players there were all first-round draft picks at their original footy clubs. They were shopping Sean Hampson around for a long time, and in the end, one of Betts, Yaron or Gal had to go. It was Betts who went. I really like what they've done. It signals, an intention of Mick Malthouse to go as hard as he can while he's still got Chris Judd around. And the Everett addition is going to be really good for Jamison and Henderson down back. He'll be the third tall back, and I think it's going to be really, really good for him. And he'll be able to swing forward when he has to at times. And I'm that buoyant about it. I'm giving them an A.
Wow, that's a strong grade.
I'm not surprised you struggled to remember Henderson. It seems like the footy season's been about 4 years away. I think that the one gaping hole, obviously, is a key forward. Jared Waite just didn't come to the party until late last year. They're crying out for a key forward. Whether they can win a premiership without a key forward remains a big question.
There's no key forward to get.
There was no key forward to get. They had a look at Podsiadly, you're right, and Gumbleton wanted to go back to Western Australia, so they couldn't just shell out for something that wasn't there.
All right, Pete, for the second year in a row, Collingwood has moved players on and secured some early draft picks.
Yeah, good performance from Derek Hine. I mean, he's just gone up the draft order. They've now got pick 6 and pick 10. The last time they had 2 picks in the top 10, they got Ben Reid and Nathan Brown, who both played in the premiership. Same as Scott Pendlebury and Dale Thomas. So that's good history for the club there. They've managed to get Jesse White, who fills that third tall, gives Travis Cloke a little bit of support. Taylor Adams is a star. Even Graham Allen said he could be a future captain of Collingwood. He might have been putting a bit of extra mayo on that, but he's obviously a quality player. Geelong was trying to get him, so they don't go after duds. Derek Hine has just positioned the club really well for another tilt in a couple of years. He's managed to move on some of those senior players, Alan Didak, Darren Jolly, Andrew Cracker, and he's got rid of Heath Shaw.
A bit of a cultural change at the Pies coming up, Damo, do you think?
Oh, clearly. I mean, that word was used, wasn't it, within an hour of the loss in the elimination final. What I like what they've done, guys, is they did this last year as well. Picked up a really nice draft of picks, and they're going to do it again next year. With Heath Shaw going out and Dale Thomas going out, and Dane Swan's contract not being the hefty money that he's on right now, going into next year, they are going to be massive players again next year.
Yeah,
We've got the stamp pretty great.
Buckley now. He's no excuse for Nathan Buckley. He's going to have a team to work with.
Yep. You've got to give us your stamp.
Well, I gave it an A-.
A- for the Magpies. Now, Damien, Essendon has traded out a couple of key forwards. They've also got Paul Chapman in and a pair of young giants as well, as we can see there.
Didn't have much to work with, did they? No. Weren't able to compete in the first 2 rounds and created something out of nothing. They got in 2 guys from GWS, as you can see there, with the 1 pick, which was low at 48. Knew for some time they were going to lose Stuart Crameri. Still fought the fight on him for a long time. Scott Gumbleton was going to Freo for some time as well. They really had not much to do with Paul Chapman coming in. It could be one of the great picks of all time, or if his body lets him down, it could be a bomb. I like what they've done. They've had a crack for it. It cost them nothing and had a go. And I've adjusted their rankings when I say what I give them. I've given them a B-, but I've adjusted it for the fact they really couldn't do much because they're out of the first 2 rounds. Yeah,
I think the real challenge for Essendon is that their forward line, they've got Michael Hurley, they've got Joe Danaher they're hoping to come through. And they've got rid of Crameri and Gumbleton. Well, they didn't so much get rid of Crameri, he wanted to leave. But the pressure is on those players now to perform. There's no excuses. Matthew Egan coaching their forward line. They've got to make them function because that's supposedly their strength.
All right, Fremantle, Pete, they've strengthened their forward line at very little cost. Speaking of Scott Gumbleton.
Yeah, well, they've done it again. They've picked up a free agent in Colin Sylvia, no cost. They're aiming for a premiership. They're just tinkering in the garden and they're basically trimming and cutting their list as they do. Scott Gumbleton's that key forward they want next to Pavlich, who was obviously so vital in the grand final to not have a key forward next to Pavlich. So they've addressed that. Hopefully Gumbleton's body stands up. It's a risk, but a risk worth taking. He's a West Australian boy. Sylvia's a super user of the ball and we've never seen him at his best. If he gets in Ross Lyon's system, we hope he'll be a really vital player and perhaps give them a premiership. Viv Mechi, he didn't get many chances. He only played 1 game, but good luck to the young man. He's gone to Melbourne under Paul Roos. I'm sure Ross Lyon would have recommended him to Paul Roos. They've done okay. They do need a key forward at some stage.
A bit like Hawthorn this time last year, identified what they lacked when it came to the crunch in the big grand final. Went and got Cole Sylvia. Gumbleton, he's only a speculative the selection in my estimations. Yep. Gave up nothing to get him. He's there. He won't be playing 22 games, but he's going to be there on certain games and it'll get him through to the top 4 again.
Yeah, they've got Kepler Bradley, Gumbleton, a few of those bit part players.
Your grade, Pete?
B.
A B for the Dockers. Now, Geelong, Damien, they have found homes for some favourite sons during this trade period, but really not much in return.
No, they couldn't. You're right. They wanted Taylor Adams and weren't able to get him, and that's a bit unlike Geelong. But, you know, when you're up against Collingwood, and Collingwood had the, I suppose, the lure of Heath Shaw to use in that transaction. So, as you see, I like what they've done. They've made tough calls on those names on the right-hand side of that screen there. They are premiership players. They're favourite sons in many respects. I really admire the clubs that make the tough calls on the older players when they have to make it. And as such, I'm going to judge them pretty nicely over this period. Even though they've brought nothing in, they've made decisions that if they didn't make now, it was going to be horrendous for them to move out older players again next year as they do. I'm going to give them a C for what they did this year.
Yeah, I think C's okay, but I think you've been a bit nice. about Geelong. I reckon one of their real weaknesses, and there's very few with Geelong, but they haven't followed that model that Hawthorn and Sydney Swans have used so well, where they've got in players that they need. It's kept them just a little bit off the pace. They would have been probably won a prelim if they'd managed to get a Sean Burgon or someone into the club. They've got a quality club. They should be attracting those players.
OK, Gold Coast, Peter, really interesting. No real action here. Talking to Marcus Ashcroft during the trade period, they have real confidence in their list, don't they?
Yeah, it's a great effort for them 3 years into the competition, and they've already got a list in the shape that they can have a quiet trade period deliberately. They've got the best player in the game, so they just went to the beach for a couple of weeks, got a compensation pick for the third round, got that off to West Coast. Good effort from Scott Clayton. They're just building towards a finals position. Finals would be a really good result for Gold Coast Suns, and that's what they're aiming to do.
You grade?
I've given them a B. I couldn't quite work out what I'd given them because they've done nothing.
The stamp is going well. The stamp is going well. Now, Damien, really interested in your thoughts on the other expansion club, the Giants. They missed out on Lance Franklin. That was no doubt a blow. They lost some young talent, but they did gain a couple of experienced players.
I don't like what they've done, Matt, and I base that on them missing out on Lance Franklin. They had 15 months to sort this out and then were blindsided and shocked and then got quite vengeful about not getting him on the Tuesday when this trade exchange started. So what I'm about to say is based around them missing out on the one they set out to get. You look at that. Mumford comes in, good. Shaw's comes in, really good. Long-term deal for Shaw. He won't be playing at the end of that 5-year deal they've given him. And Mumford has been given a contract that may be $200,000 a year more than any other club was prepared to offer on a 12-month basis. So I just don't like what they've done as a collective. Dom Tyson's gone out. What they've done well, and they've done this very well, but they can do it by way of the concessions they've already had and still get. They've got picks 1 and 2 and 14 out of what's happened here, and that's really, really good. But they went into this period needing to get some experience in. And as it stands right now, Josh Hunt is the third member of that, bringing the experienced players in. Josh Hunt they got for nothing, and will be good, and he'll be good off the field as much as on the field for that young group. But I want to judge them harshly in terms of what they did, because they missed out on the biggest name available and they missed out to the team down the road, and as such I'm going to give them a D for what they did. Yeah,
look, it might affect both clubs what's happened there with Buddy, but they offered him 6 years at, say, 1.2, who knows, I think it was 1.2 million. They offered Tom Scully a similar thing, and we're talking about...
balked at it.
Yeah, and balked at it. So we're talking about one of the best players to ever play the game. They needed Franklin and they didn't.
They've wasted money on Izzy Folau too.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've got to mature as a footy club. They've got a great deal of talent in that football club. They've got a good football department, but they've just got to get on with the business of winning games.
Both scathing there, really. I thought maybe you might have gone for an E or an F the way you were talking there, Damo. Now, Hawthorn might have lost Lance Franklin, but that deal to secure Ben McAvoy, Pete, that surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, good effort from Hawthorn to get McAvoy. McAvoy's a quality individual, quality player, and he really keeps the window open for Hawthorn this year when they're reloading. We expected after Buddy Franklin, they'll obviously be in the free agency market next year. A lot of room in the salary cap, but Ben McAvoy's a quality player. He's not the best ruckman in the world. He's a little bit slow, but he can take an intercept mark. He'll be able to help out Brian Lake, Josh Gibson, those guys down back, and he just keeps them alive. He keeps their midfield like Lewis, Mitchell, Sewell. They're getting old, their midfield, but they're quality players, so I think it's a fair performance.
And Pete, what they've done, to me, is what Collingwood has done. Position themselves for next year, have a massive crack at a free agent. They've got money to burn next year, and we know they've got a track record of picking up big-name players anyway. I like what they've done because they haven't reacted to what's out there. They're going to wait, and they've obviously got someone in mind already.
Well, I imagine James Frawley's one of the free agents. There's a lot of quality free agents coming out in the next couple of years. Hawthorn would be a great club to go to.
What are you giving them?
What have I given them? Can we show that? B+.
B+. All right, if you've just joined us, you're watching afl.com.au. We are streaming the Gillette AFL trade wrap. Peter Ryan and Damien Barrett alongside Matt Thompson. Let's turn to Melbourne. Damien, I remember sitting here with you 12 months ago. You were very, very harsh on them. Bernie Vince and Dom Tyson headlined their acquisitions. They traded away pick 2, as we know. What do you think this year?
Well, it was scattergun last year, Matt, and that was a word that was justified at the way it played out. I've still got question marks over what they did this year. I don't get the Dom Tyson fanfare around it. He was 500 to 1 to be that player that instituted the move to them to give up pick 2. Now, we know there was other trade picks around what happened there, but they went for Dangerfield and Sloan and the West Coast trio of players. They would have been okay to give up pick 2 on. I really do have my concerns about what they've done with pick 2, and that's not to put the dampeners. I really hope Dom Tyson becomes a good player. I don't know how they gave up pick 2 for him. It's a watch this space situation.
How they gave
no,
up
I don't need to give up. It's my opinion on that, Glenn. You can have your opinion. Bernie Vince, I reckon they've given up way too much for him too. I like him. He's going to bring a lot to the club off the field, but I reckon giving up pick 22 or 23 as it was is too much for a guy whose best football is right behind him. And Adelaide was quite happy for him to move on him. Daniel Cross, a nice pickup as well, but I just don't think they got enough back for what they gave up in pick 2.
Is Damo being too harsh, Pete?
There's a little doubt he is. I mean, they've got pick 2's Dom Tyson. He's he's obviously not the Tom Rockcliffe or the Scott Selwood or one of those Rory Sloane that he mentioned, but he's a quality young player. Then they've got pick 9, who they think they can get the player that they're actually after originally.
They always get the pick they
we might get Jason Taylor to hand us an envelope for who he's intending to pick, and we can look at it after the draft. But he's got a few players like Freeman. That's one of the players that's been mentioned. They'll be around at pick 9. They're good players. They've then got Jesse Hogan, which we can't forget, which has been an extra
but we're talking about what happened in this trade exchange. That was last year.
I agree with that, but in terms of how they're building the whole package of the list, that's an essential component. Obviously, Jesse Hogan, I think Fremantle might be sniffing around him at some stage, but that's the way I see it.
I think it was an F last year. Question marks and watch this space, but it's a D for me.
Well, that's slightly better, but Melbourne fans are already tweeting in asking, do you have a vendetta against the D's or something?
Where was I wrong last year in use of the word scattergun? I think 100%
you did end up being right.
And as I said, D's not too bad on some of the assessments we've given.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm playing devil's advocate.
Good word.
All right, to North Melbourne now, Pete. They landed Nick Del Santo through free agency. Didn't get much for Luke Delaney.
Well, they got Nick Del Santo for free and they really held their nerve there, which was a good effort. They didn't want to give away a pick. They got Luke McDonald, who's going to be a quality player, father-son, so their pick 8 was used up. They wanted to hang on to their second-round pick, so they held their nerve. Nick Del Santo wanted to get there. The negotiations went right down to last Friday, but he's a quality player, and particularly with the young midfield they've got, Zeeble, Cunnington, these sort of Swallow, inside mids, and then they've got Wells, Harvey and Nick Del Santo outside. That's a really good result. Luke Delaney, they've given him another opportunity. They actually wanted to hang on to him, but that was a sort of an oiling of the wheels to get the Del Santo thing happening. So good position for them.
And what have you given them?
B.
A B for the Kangaroos. A quick comment on the Kangas, Damo?
Yeah, I like what they did. I like how they identified Del Santo and then really sold themselves to him, got their leadership group into him to go and see him before the grand final. Got the chairman involved, James Brochure, at one stage too. Really like it. Went and got him. Played the Russian roulette in getting him as a free agent, but well done to him.
Yeah, and they really did that sell well, the Kangaroos. Yep. There's no doubt about that through all aspects of the club. Now, Port Adelaide, Damien, Jared Pollock, he caused some controversy by declaring that he wanted to go to the Power and demanding to get there despite his lack of experience. They got him in the end.
Yeah, and that in itself is a big statement, just by way of that two-team town, just to think that the player that both clubs were desperate for chose Port Adelaide. It took a while to get there, but they were confident the whole way through, got there. Identified Matthew White as a free agent, and I like that selection. They sort of chose him out of nowhere when it happened, but I can see why. They really have identified him being a player who was not going to get the opportunities that they can give him at the current club, at the club he was at. And I quite like what they've done. That they were only bit players when it was all said and done, but they felt on what they built in 2013. They couldn't do much and didn't need to do a hell of a lot. So Pollock being in, if Pollock comes off, it's going to be a really good call. But there are some question marks about him. He's got to get his football body right. But overall, I think it was a good period for them.
You great?
I'm going to give him a B-.
Quick, Pete.
Yeah, well, I think that's good. Pollock back in their own stable. He'll probably be a better player than he was in Brisbane.
All right, now Richmond is yours to grade. Pete, Sean Hampson was the headline story at Tigerland.
Yeah, well, they were after a ruckman. They wanted some support for Ivan Marriage, so they targeted Sean Hampson. They obviously didn't think Ben McAvoy would be a likely scenario. They got him for pick 28, which was just getting the deal done. I mean, I look at Richmond as one of those clubs. It's almost like you're ahead of your mortgage and you start buying some nice furniture and just putting it in there and building towards. They didn't get sucked into Paul Chapman, which people were talking about, because they know that a premiership's probably not likely next year. They want to win a final. They get Hampson in for a bit of depth. They've got good history at just adding a couple of players each year and then using their first-round draft pick really well. That's been the signature tune of the Damien Hardwick era. So I think they're consistent. Hampson will add a bit. I mean, he's not a great player, but he can add a bit up forward and he can give Merritt some relief. So I think it's a good effort.
I like the clubs that go into this period knowing what they want to do and just go and do it. And when they did that deal with Hampson, I thought it was a bit overs, but upon reflection, it was a really good deal. They got it done really early. Gave up 28 at the time, became 32 after the compensation packages were handed out. But good pick-up, well done. Probably played overs for him, but got the man they felt they needed.
Exactly right. There's Floston, those guys come through the draft. They're in good position.
All right, Pete, get the stamp ready.
B.
A B for the Tigers. St Kilda, very active. They've got 3 picks in the top 20, which is what they talked about. Let's talk about them, Damo. They also got that key defender they wanted.
Like it a lot, what they did. The Ben McAvoy thing threw us all. Everyone bar St Kilda and Hawthorn, which is where he's ended up. Nick D'Alessandro, it's the right decision, and not just is it the right decision for the club, it's the right decision for Nick D'Alessandro and North Melbourne. So, well done. By making the McAvoy call, what it actually did was set up, I suppose, the landscape for that club to go and do some other trades. And we can see the names on the left-hand side there. They're going to be good players for that club. They're all going to get the opportunities at that club that they weren't able to get at the clubs they were at. I really like how they did it. Chris Pelkin has got a plan, and in hindsight, it started last year when they used picks 12 and 13 on Hickey and Tom Lee, and they've got question marks over them, but he identified them, and now they've had a year under the system. I think they're going to be okay. And you add the players we saw there, Savage, Delaney, Longer and Bruce, they're all going to get chances at regular senior footy. I like what they've done, and importantly, they've done all that and they've retained picks 3, 8, 18 and 19. They've done a really, really good job here, and I like what they've done because it's a 4-year project from where they're at. Yeah,
they've delivered on what they said that they were going to do, basically, and they're starting to build a new group who might contend for finals in several years' time. It's going to take time. We all know the culture of the club needs to change a little bit. We all know that guys like Tommy Lee need to lift their rating, but they're in a good position.
I'll put it up there with Collingwood in terms of the best performers, the way I read it, and I'm going to give them an A.
All right, and considering all the turmoil that's going on there off the field, and that's been something that's been talked about in the background through this trade period, just a very quick word on Scott Waters, because he obviously needs to get a new contract next year.
Yeah, he does, and I still don't think it's an absolute lock-in that'll be there at round 1. I reckon there's still a little bit to play out. So, strangely enough, he's there as we speak and he's contracted, but he needs to do a bit before Christmas to be absolutely assured.
All right, we're almost there. We're going club by club on afl.com.au to Sydney now, Pete. They got Lance Franklin, but lost some depth.
Well, they lost some depth, and who knows what else they lost, really. I mean, they've got Buddy Franklin there for 9 years, which is an extraordinary move. They've got Brand Buddy, which will keep Sydney in the news for the next 9 years. But in football terms, it's $3,000 a day. So we all know that's a lot of money for Big Buddy. Great player.
They've lost. Good if you can get it.
Good if you can get it, yeah, I wouldn't mind that. They've lost Mumford. They've lost White. They've lost Tony Armstrong. They've lost Andre Everett. They've lost Jed Lamb. That's 5 players. That's a big, big group of players to go out of a club that's renowned for its culture, renowned for its tightness, renowned for sticking together on and off the field. So who knows what the fallout of Buddy, but it puts a lot of pressure on him to perform.
And you grade?
I've graded them a D, actually. I think it's too big a move, too risky. And
they've landed Lance Franklin, you give him a D.
I know that's a harsh, isn't it? But I tell you why I've given them a D, because it's too big a risk. It's going to. You don't necessarily need to get the best player in the competition to make it a success. 9 years, they've basically mortgaged Sydney Swans culture and footy club on Buddy Franklin. They've already got Kurt Tippett. They've got a great midfield. They're a premiership contender.
Yeah. And what long-term impact will it have?
They didn't need to take that risk.
Yeah, I'm never going to knock a club that goes out and gets the biggest name in it. I do share your thoughts that the 9 years I think is a disgrace, and I think the AFL shouldn't have signed off on it. But I reckon when you land him in this trade period, which we are assessing right now, to give him a D, I reckon you're a bit harsh.
Fair enough.
All right, West Coast. In comes Xavier Ellis and Elliot Yeo. Their early draft position has been weakened somewhat, though, Damo.
It has. I still can't get my head around why they offloaded pick 6 to Collingwood as part of that transaction, which got them 11 back. But again, they did it for reasons that are best known to them. Yo's a good pickup. People were saying of the 5 Brisbane Lions players who wanted out, he might have been the best of them, and they got him, and they were always going to get him, even though it took some time to officially transact it. Xavier Ellis, I like. His best is still very good, and he's claiming that his body's absolutely fine. So I like how they've done it too. It's not going to cost him if it blows up too, because he is on a contract that is performance-based. If he reaches a certain amount of games in 2014, he'll get a 2015 deal. Yo, they're talking up highly, and I think with good reason. He's got some nice moves, and they just see him pitting. But overall, I just found that this club is historically conservative when it comes to this time on the AFL calendar. They were that way again, and I just can't quite work out, what the moves they've done in this past month is going to mean for them in 2014. And I've given them a C for what they've done.
There you go. That's Damo's last stamp. And Pete, the Western Bulldogs, finally they've snared a key forward. But is Stuart Crameri really the answer, do you think?
He's a short-term answer. They've got him for 4 years, but he's a third sort of forward, not your key Buddy Franklin or Kurt Tippett type forward. They needed someone desperately, though. You've got to get the inside 50 numbers that they were getting and not be having a key forward to kick to. Then you have to get someone with Stuart Crameri's strength, experience, goal-kicking ability. He'll certainly add a lot of confidence to that forward line, and he'll teach the younger players how to go about it. The good thing was they didn't budge on pick 26. They weren't going to move. They didn't get ruffled when Essendon played hardball, and basically they stuck to their guns, and Stuart Crameri was always going to get there. Paul Connors, his manager, is get you the player that you want. And they also made Sam Daly, they've slotted him into the list, young list. I think it's a good effort by the Bulldogs. They're a better team now than they were at the start of the trade period.
Give us the grade.
I've given them a B-.
There you go.
A serious B-.
Very, very quick answer to this question. Is the trade and free agency period too long?
Yeah, it can be wrapped up inside 2 weeks, maybe even 10 days.
I reckon that Saturn's gone around the Earth about 3 times in this period. Too long by far.
Guys, thanks for being with us this afternoon. It's gone very well. Appreciate it. Damien Barrett and Peter Ryan. Now, make sure you continue to click back to afl.com.au for all the latest trade news, videos and updates right through the off-season. Next week, we'll have the release of the 2014 fixture for you, and every single day between now and the draft, we are counting down to the NAB AFL draft on the Gold Coast. Very much looking forward to that. For now, from all the team here, thanks for watching.